안녕하십니까.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to KWDI International Forum on Beijing Plus 25. First of all, I would like to make a housekeeping announcement. Today, I will be moderating the conference in Korean, but for efficient proceeding with the conference,
So hello everyone. Development and cooperation. Welcome to our forum today, KWDI International Forum on Beijing Plus 25, titled Beijing and Beyond, Creating Gender Equal Future with the Next Generation. I'd like to welcome everyone who has taken time to actually come to this forum online and offline to celebrate this important event together. Before I begin, I'd like to explain very shortly about the background of this forum today. As we all know, this year has been a monumental year. This year would have been a monumental year for international community for the 25 years of anniversary of Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, 20-year anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325, the Women, Peace, and Agenda, and also the 5th year of Sustainable Development Goals. But to our great disappointment, this international community has planned many events, but because of this pandemic, all these events has been canceled or postponed to the next year. Even we cannot congregate this year at this moment, we thought maybe if we cannot do offline, we can do something online to prepare for next year's event. So this was behind the objective of our forum today. Especially, I'd like to deliver our sincere thanks to the Embassy of Mexico and Embassy of France in South Korea for their wonderful cooperation to make this forum possible. So without further ado, I thank you again. Thank you everyone for your participation. And I'd like to begin the forum now. First, I'd like to invite the president of Korean Women's Development Institute, Ms. Yoo Kyung-moon, to the podium for her welcome remark.
안녕하십니까? 저는 한국여성정책연구원 원장 문유경입니다. Good afternoon. My name is Moon Yu-kyung. I am president of Korea Women's Development Institute, KWDI. Thank you very much for joining us online for KWDI International Forum on Beijing Plus 25. This forum has been organized together with Mexican Embassy and French Embassy in South Korea. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to His Excellencies Ambassador Bruno Figueroa and Ambassador Philip Rapport. The goal of this forum is to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Beijing Platform for Action and to discuss a gender equal future with the next generation in view of the Generation Equality Forum to be held in 2021. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action, the 20th anniversary of the UNSCR 1325, and the 5th anniversary of Sustainable Development Goals. It is truly meaningful year for moving towards the realization of gender equality across the globe. To celebrate this, UN Women declared 2020 is a landmark year towards the achievement of gender equality and decided to convene the Generation Equality Forum with Mexico and France in close partnership with civil society. Its agenda touches upon various areas such as gender-based violence, economic justice and right, sexual and reproductive health and right, and women's representation. The Generation Equality Forum was originally scheduled for this year, but had to be postponed due to COVID-19. KWDI's forum today, organized ahead of the Generation Equality Forum, is divided into two sessions. In the first session, presenters from Mexico, France, and Korea will highlight the significance and achievement of Beijing Platform for Action and gender equality agenda that need to be addressed going forward. In session 2, the roundtable session, youth activists from different countries will share their views on main gender equality topics and present their ideas for a gender equal future. Since Beijing Declaration of 25 years ago, there has been significant change and progress in gender equality. Still, there remains a stark gap between policy and reality, and we are seeing emerging challenges such as misogyny, gender conflict, and digital gender violence. Worse, COVID-19 pandemic aggravates gender inequality, deepening female poverty, and widening gender gap in the labor market. Gender inequality is not confined to a certain region or a period, so it calls for all parties' interest and solidarity across genders, generations, and borders. I hope that diverse proposals and strategies discussed today will spark intergenerational conversations and contribute to building global solidarity. KWDI will continue its efforts to provide a forum for different generations in different sectors of the society to understand and move forward gender equality. Today, we are joined by officials from Mexican and French embassies in Seoul and young activists working in different parts of the world. I sincerely thank them for their contribution, and I look forward to working with the institutions represented today in the future. I wish you the best year end and good luck going forward. Thank you very much.
네, 원장님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks.
Thank you, President Moon, for your welcome remark. The next person who will be gracing us with his presence is His Excellency Bruno Figueroa, the Ambassador of Mexico to the Republic of Korea. Please.
I would like to thank first the president of the Korean Women's Development Institute, KWDI, Moon Yoo-kyung, and all her team for organizing this event, particularly Dr. Chang Eun-ha and Dr. Yoon Ji-so for their invaluable support. I salute the distinguished personalities who will make presentations today from France, Korea, and Mexico, as well as my colleague, Ambassador Philippe Lefort. I also thank the representatives of the Generation Equality Youth Task Force for their participation. It is for me an honor to give congratulatory remarks in this special day, which observes the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. I am grateful to KWDI for making this event possible, which is a great opportunity to present the upcoming Generation Equality Forum. The Mexican government is feminist. Since a few years ago, Mexico has included the gender perspective in its National Development Plan and has focused on the need to incorporate it into all government actions, including foreign policy. The political reform carried out in 2019 allows women to be candidates for elected office in equal conditions, as well as ensuring parity in all levels of government and in the three powers: executive, legislative, and the judiciary. In this regard, it is to be noted that as of the current year 2020, the federal cabinet is close to parity. Moreover, 7 laws have been recently reformed in order to prevent, sanction, and eradicate political violence against women, establishing protection and damage repair measures. Last year, Mexico became the first Latin American country to adopt and announce a feminist foreign policy, joining France, Canada, Norway, and Sweden. This policy seeks to promote government actions to reduce and eliminate structural differences, gender gaps, and inequalities. During my long diplomatic career, I have met exceptional women who have worked hard for making gender equality a reality. Vice Minister Marta Delgado and Ambassador Janerit Morgan are leading examples. They will make presentations today about the initiative that Mexico and France launched last year, the Generation Equality Forum. Gender equality faces today many pressing challenges which have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Generation Equality Forum can contribute to tackle some of them. We look forward to seeing Korea, a country with strong commitments on the issue, joining the forum and participating in at least one of its very meaningful activities. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Ambassador Figueroa, for your wonderful congratulatory remarks. Now, I'd like to invite His Excellency Philippe Lefort, the ambassador from France to the Republic of Korea, for his congratulatory remarks.
안녕하십니까? 필립 레퍼입니다. 이번엔 대사입니다. 여러분, 감사합니다. Chers amis, Monsieur l'ambassadeur, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here as co-host of this wonderful seminar on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which is kicking off the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. I am very grateful to the Korean Women's Development Institute for convening this event, and I also want to thank the young and talented panel experts who will share their ideas with us today. I am sure that this event will bring us a lot of inspiration, and I hope that we will turn this inspiration into action. As the ambassador of Mexico said, the Forum Generation Equality convened by UN Women will take place next year in our 2 countries. Today's event is a great opportunity to highlight the forum in Korea. Actually, many people have heard about it, but some of them did not really know why it will make a difference. So let me say 3 things about it. First, it will be the largest international meeting on gender equality in many years. Second, the word generation is important. The Beijing Conference on Women took place 1 generation ago, or shall I say, 25 years ago. After the conference, hundreds of new laws and measures were implemented to improve women's situation in 130 countries. But in recent years, women's rights became challenged. As French President Macron said during the United Nations General Assembly, it's no secret that in 2020, the Beijing Declaration would have no chance of being adopted. At my age, I've seen many positive transformations for women. I think to the generation of my mother and my parents. I'm also reflecting about the experience of raising my daughters. And I also think to my well, little cared granddaughters. I'm 65 years old. 할아버지입니다. So I hope really that this transformation will continue with the next generations. Third, this event is called a forum because many people will exchange ideas, not only governments, but also civil society and private sector. They will also work towards concrete and ambitious actions in order to achieve gender equality. This commitment will make a big difference to end violence against women, to expand equal opportunities, men and women, younger and older generations. France is proud to co-host the forum. In 2017, gender equality was declared a great national cause in France, and we adopted a feminist diplomacy. Since then, we devoted 97 million euros to sexual and reproductive rights and health, the French priority in the forum. We devoted 320 million euros to finance projects to the fight against gender inequality in southern countries. In 2019, we have launched a support fund for women's organizations, which will allocate 100 million euros to women's organizations in countries receiving official development assistance. I hope that today will be a good opportunity for you to realize how you can contribute to a future of equality. I look forward to today's outcome. Thank you very much. 감사합니다. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, President Moon Yoo-kyung, and also to ambassadors for taking time to actually come to this place and congratulate our forum. 네, 원장님 그리고 두
President of KWDI and to His Excellency Ambassadors, thank you very much for your contribution. We'd like to start the first session, which will be proceeded in English. In the first session, we will listen to the presentations from the speakers from Mexico, France, and Korea, and we will look at the significance of Beijing Plus 25 from history context, and we will also listen to the youth representatives. First of all, we have the speaker from Mexico and France. I'd like to introduce to you the first speaker from Mexico, the Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs and Human Rights, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, Mrs. Martha Delgado Peralta. She has been in this area for a very long time, and she has served as the executive leadership position in the public sector. We will meet with her through the video clip first.
President of the Korean Women's Development Institute, I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this relevant event. For the government of Mexico, gender equality has been historically a primary cause. As you may know, in 1975, Mexico hosted the first international conference on the advancement of the women agenda. Then and now, the government of Mexico is fully committed to the achievement of gender equality. Now, the gender parity in the President's cabinet and Congress is an example of this endeavor. In this context, this event is very connected to the forum. It's time to pass on the baton and create a gender equality future, not for, but with the next generation. The forum, it's a collective and innovative partnership that takes into account all the stakeholders and advocates, including governments, civil society, feminist movements, private sector foundations, the academia, among others. All of them will come together in a public conversation and design common efforts. Due to the pandemic of COVID-19, we had to postpone the forum in Mexico and France to the first semester of the next year, and the Mexican Forum will be celebrating from March 20th to 31st, and defined by the current situation of the pandemic. Due to the pandemic of COVID-19, we had to postpone the forum in Mexico and France to the first semester of next year. The Mexican Forum will be celebrated from March 29th to 31st in a format still to be defined, subject to the sanitary conditions on those dates. The forum in France will be held in June. Nevertheless, be sure that we have been working very hard for not losing the momentum that we are now engaged in robust preparation of the forum. As an example, I want to mention that the forum is action-oriented. Under this format, it will carry out 6 actions coalitions on gender-based violence, economic justice and rights, body autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights, feminist action for climate justice, and feminist movement. And the 6th is on leadership, technology, and innovation for gender equality. These action coalitions are global, innovative, multi-stakeholder partnerships which will mobilize government, civil society, international organizations, UN agencies, and also the private sector around the specific actions that will be implemented in a 5-year term to address some of the challenges for achieving gender equality. Also, the Compact on Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action headed by member states and civil society organizations will be a very valuable instrument to support international efforts for the implementation on its very relevant agenda and the commitments of the Resolution 1325 on the UN Security Council. We are also organizing a series of curated discussions and public conversations that will provide an opportunity to address transversally the themes with the intersectionality approach needed for the success of the Generation Equality Forum, including, for example, a bigger and more diverse number of participants involved in the process with a grassroots approach. The Generation Equality Forum is a key moment for global mobilization. The event is primarily based on the same logic that made possible the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action 25 years ago. The power of activism, feminist solidarity, and young leadership to achieve transformative change is the most important thing for us right now. Dear friends, Mexico firmly believes that effective and modern multilateralism represents the best means for addressing common challenges. COVID-19 pandemic is an example of the need to revitalize and boost multilateral cooperation and explore new avenues of collaboration with the participation of non-traditional stakeholders. It is crystal clear this is not business as usual. We have the imperative to fight together to overcome what we lack to achieve full gender equality. Gender inequality is unacceptable right now. It's something that plain and simply prevents us from granting freedoms, rights, and equal societies in the world. We have the great challenge to design the type of society and the world we want to be in. We have a lot to do, but we can do it with enthusiasm, conviction, and commitment. I count with your engagement, and I hope to see you all at the Generation Equality Forum in 2021. Thank you very much.
네, 델가도 차관님.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister.
우리 세대를 넘어서뿐만 아니라 수평적으로
So she mentioned that the issue of women need to be resolved from multilateral approach. Next, I would like to invite the Ambassador and Secretary General of the Generation Equality Forum 2020, Delphine O. Ambassador Delphine O is already known to some of you. So she's the expert in the Middle East issues and also served as the ambassador in the French embassy in many other countries, and her father is a Korean, so many of you may be familiar with the ambassador. I'd like to invite Ambassador Delfino.
Mrs. and Mr. the Ambassadors, Mrs. the Minister Delgado, dear Mata, Mrs. the President of the Korean Women's Development Institute, dear friends. First of all, I would like to thank the Korean Women's Development Institute, as well as the French Embassy and the Mexican Embassy in South Korea, for organizing this event on the occasion of this highly symbolic day, today being the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and this highly symbolic year of commemorations for women's rights. 2020 marks the 25th anniversary of the 4th UN World Conference on Women and the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the international blueprint that paved the way to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment. In 1995, states gathered in Beijing and made a decisive contribution to the progress of humanity. By recognizing that women's rights are fundamental human rights, they finally recognized the need to accelerate efforts to guarantee women and girls the same rights and opportunities as men. As highlighted by the regional review conferences organized by the UN regional offices, the majority of UN member states have taken up this issue. But unfortunately, the United Nations Secretary General 2019 report on the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action is also clear on the road that still remains today to be covered. According to this report, the Beijing vision is only partly realized. Even worse, some women's rights are undermined today, in particular the right of every woman to freely dispose of their body and their sexual and reproductive health and rights. In October, 32 countries signed the Geneva Consensus, a conservative statement that jeopardizes the right for abortion. The COVID-19 pandemic also threatens to reverse decades of progress in achieving gender equality. In this context, the Generation Equality Forum will give a new impulse for women's rights. 25 years ago, the whole world gathered in Beijing to recognize, affirm, and enshrine the rights of women. And 25 years later, we will meet in Mexico City in March 2021 and in Paris in early June for the Generation Equality Forum. Under the aegis of UN Women and under the joint presidency of France and Mexico, we will bring together all the actors of gender equality. Together, we will recall that these rights are inalienable, and we will lay the groundwork for fully achieving gender equality. In its own format and governance structure, the Generation Equality Forum will be very unique because it will gather together member states, civil society, including the youth, business, academics, and philanthropic associations, as well as other stakeholders to ensure that all voices will be heard to accelerate action regarding women's rights and gender equality. The Generation Equality Forum will launch a set of 6 action coalitions. Each action coalition will enable to develop a set of concrete, ambitious, and transformative actions that coalition members will take between 2021 and 2026 in order to achieve immediate and irreversible progress towards gender equality. This methodology of inclusive work embodies the quintessence of the Generation Equality Forum, going beyond multilateralism of words to multilateralism of action. In a few words, I would like to highlight the key aspects of each of the 6 action coalitions. The first action coalition is dedicated to gender-based violence. We would like to address all forms of gender-based violence, both online and offline, that had already endemic proportion before the COVID-19 pandemic, but have intensified because of the lockdown period. Last September, the champions of this action coalition answered the UN Secretary General's call to deal with this shadow pandemic and issued a general statement. Second, the Economic Justice and Rights Action Coalition will place women's empowerment and economic justice for women at the center of their recovery. Equal pay, women's access to resources and ownership, setting a gender lens to their recovery plans are more than ever necessary. Third, the Bodily Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Coalition is about making sure that every woman and girl can take informed decisions and decide freely on all matters regarding her own body, her sexuality, and the way she wants to live. It is a matter of access to contraceptives, access to information, and comprehensive sexuality education, about changing gender norms and putting an end to harmful practices, such as forced marriage or female genital mutilation. Fourth, the Action Coalition Feminist Action for Climate Justice will aim at enhancing the role of women in the fight against climate change. It will create actions to alleviate its disproportionate impact on women, especially female farmers and poor women. It will also focus on educating girls about environmental justice. Fifth, the Action Coalition dedicated to technology and innovation for gender equality. Women must be enablers of innovation and technology to curb the increase of the digital gender gap that may arise from the crisis. Programs of education and training on STEM and technology processes for women and girls have to be dramatically scaled up. The innovative and digital workplace must be safe and secure from harassment. Innovation itself must become gender responsive and inclusive. This is the only way to make technology efficient for all. And finally, the Coalition for Feminist Movements and Leadership brings together states, international organizations, foundations, supporting the diversity of feminist movements. It will launch collaborations to better support grassroots NGOs and increase the participation for women across all organizations. Along these 6 action coalitions, we're also working on the definition of a Women, Peace and Security Compact. This compact will give a new impulse to the Women, Peace and Security agenda by rallying member states, NGOs, private companies behind women, peace and security commitments and enabling new funding. States such as Norway, Sierra Leone, the United Arab Emirates and Namibia are among the board members ready to fully endorse this initiative. The 6 action coalitions and the other initiatives will be officially launched during the high-level segment in Paris. We would be delighted to count on South Korea within one of these initiatives, or many. Despite pandemic uncertainty, our ambitions remain unchanged, and we do hope that heads of state and governments, including from South Korea, will be able to attend the Paris Forum in June 2021 for this global event. This fruitful partnership between France, Mexico, and UN Women shows the universality of this challenge, which will be highlighted at the forum. In order to be a game-changing event for women's rights progress, the forum needs to benefit from the largest possible audience. We are working to adapt the format of the forum to the constraints in terms of participants and travels, including by enhancing its digital platform. Time for action and systematic change has come, and we're counting on you to finally make the generation equality a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Davino.
Next, we will listen to a Korean presenter. The presenter is Young-suk Jo, Ambassador for Gender Equality of Korea. Currently, she is the chair of the International Solidarity Center of Korea Women's Associations United, and she is the expert in women's movement. And also, she plays a key role in the Central Support Center for Women's Human Rights. The title of her presentation is Beijing Plus 25 and the Hope for the Next Generation. Great to see you all today. So I am joined by His Excellencies of Ambassador of French and Mexico embassies, and today I would like to talk about the Generation Equality Forum and its significance. And I will tell you what kinds of activities are being carried out in Korea in view of the Generation Equality Forum. The international norms and standards have affected the gender policies of Korea. In 1979, CEDAW was adopted at the UN, and in 1993, DEVAW was adopted at the UN in order to eliminate violence against women. After that, sexual reproductive health and rights were discussed at ICPD in 1994. And in the early 1990s, there were the consensuses on the elimination of discrimination and violence against women. And after all those endeavors, Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action were adopted in 1995. And after that, UNSCR 1325 was adopted in 2000 and SDGs were decided upon in 2015. These actions or the compacts have raised issues with the gender policies of Korea, and thanks to the Beijing Platform for Action, there has been change in gender equality policies of Korea. So it raised two main questions for the Korean society. The first question was, is an equal society possible without gender equality? And the second question was, is a democratic society possible without eliminating GBV? Another question we can think of is a sustainable peace possible without the consistent participation of women? So these questions were raised after the adoption of Beijing Platform for Action. So gender-related policies were adopted after 1919. However, before 1990, South Korea implemented various measures to address different issues, gender-related issues. In 1995, even before the Beijing Platform for Action, there were many issues related to gender. Korea experienced colonization and the Korean War and dictatorship, military dictatorship, and also lots of side effects due to the fast industrialization. And there were the workers' protests and also the democratization movement and feminist movement. So there was a strong participation and involvement of the civil society. Those activities were translated into the policies, and as a result, the related government body was established, and also the female-friendly measures or policies were implemented by the government, including the quota system and also the eradication of the paternal family headship system. And from 2000, gender mainstreaming strategy was implemented in a bigger scale. So it included the gender budget, or gender responsive budget system, gender training, etc. So such a dramatic change happened after the Beijing Platform for Action. But today, these days, many young women ask this question. Me Too movement was quite strongly sweeping the Korean society over the past few years. And because of the technology advancement, people are enjoying lots of benefits. However, cyber violence occurred as a side effect. And also, there is a strong misogyny in the Korean society. And nowadays, there are some issues such as date violence or the date murder. And such an instance is increasing. In this kind of situation, and the women's suicide rate is increasing. And there has been attack on women's rights defenders and organizations. "25 years after since the Beijing Declaration, we say that there has been great achievement and progress, but still we are faced with lots of challenges. One of the I would like to share with you some key challenges. This slide shows gender gap index from 2010 to 2019. Korea was ranked at 104th out of 134 countries, but still in 2019, it is ranked at 108th out of 153 countries. In these four main sections, Korea achieved quite high level in education and health. So there is quite a strong level of parity between men and women. However, in the first two indices, such as economy and politics, Korea is one of the lowest ranked countries. And in terms of the economic participation, women's participation is only about 55% compared to men. And in terms of the political participation, women participate at only 17% compared to men. This index has not changed dramatically from 2010 to 2019. But this is really worrisome for us. And in terms of the gender gap and glass ceiling, after Beijing, and the previous gender gap index included the countries which are much less developed than Korea. But when we compare Korea with other OECD countries, Korea is at almost bottom in terms of gender wage gap. So Korea received the lowest point in terms of gender wage gap. In addition, when we talk about glass ceiling index, Korea is almost at the bottom out of the OECD countries. So as a woman, and for the young women, these are really shocking indices. These two cases show that economic growth does not necessarily guarantee gender equality. This means that action is urgently required to close gender gap, and that's the assessment from the OECD. So OECD highlighted two main issues for Korea. So Korea has some issue of balancing work and life. And also, the OECD recommended that actions are required to close gender gap, especially in the economic participation. However, from the political representation perspective, Korea's score is not that remarkable, it's not that satisfactory. This shows that for the past 25 years, Korea has developed its democracy. However, the social democratization does not necessarily guarantee gender equality. And as a recent issue is how to recognize, revalue, and redistribute the care work which is concentrated on women. And much of the work done by women are not compensated properly. Even if a woman is employed, the woman should spend a large portion of their time for taking care or the doing unpaid work. So even for an employed woman, that does lots of unpaid work compared to husband. And we can ask this question: why we don't ask the opinion of a woman, even if we are talking about her body? In the 1960s and 70s, the government tries to prevent women from having more children. So the government adopted the population control policy up until the 1980s or 90s. But today, the population growth is almost negative. Therefore, the government changed its policy dramatically to encourage more childbirth. But the key issue with such a policy change is that the government did not ask for the opinion of women, even if we are talking about, we are dealing with, or we are discussing their body. Korea is a divided country, and therefore, the South Korea and North Korea faces the security issues. However, women are not properly engaged or involved in such dialogue. As French ambassador mentioned, women, peace, and security should be very important topic for Korea, in addition to 6 main themes of Generation Equality Forum. As I mentioned, after Beijing, different laws and policies were implemented, but there is a stark gap between the policy and the reality. There are still structural discrimination against the women, and related to the violence against women, we are seeing emerging types of violence against women, such as digital violence. Still, women are not asked of their opinion in terms of their abortion, and so we are talking about the gender mainstreaming. However, it is not being realized in our lives. With regards to the UNSCR 1325, we have to find a way to involve women's voices. And as for the SDGs, we need to adopt gender transformative approach. As I said, Korea has achieved lots of progress since Beijing. It is time to pay a greater attention to the Action Coalition for Gender Generation Equality. And these 6 main action coalitions give us lots of homework to do. In this regard, so we need to address emerging issues in addition to the old issues. As for the old problems, there are the lack of measures and tools to implement laws and policies, and there is a shortage of finance and human capital to implement gender mainstreaming, and also there has been inadequate improvement in women's economy and political gender gap, and there is lack of willingness and efforts to change patriarchal organizational culture, and also another issue is lack of practices for gender transformative change. And as for the new problems, we can think about gender-based violence and the work and life incompatibility. Also, the denial of choice and self-determination. And intensified gender inequality because of COVID-19 crisis. Also, sexism-based malicious comments in the internet, and last issue we need to deal with is the attack against women's rights defenders and women's organizations. We have to think about how to resolve these new emerging challenges. So we have to address these old and new problems through Generation Equality Forum. I believe that the changes are required at these 4 levels. First of all, we need to secure gender transformative individual change. And also there has to be relational change, including the family, friends, and the private relationships. And also there needs to be gender transformative change at our organizations, such as schools and workplaces. And lastly, we need to achieve social and structural changes. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Cho. From global perspectives, how the agenda affected Korean policies, and she also explained about the women's issues we're faced today and our future direction. Here, we have a distinguished guest who is here with us online, Ambassador Yaneri Morgan of the Generation Equality Forum. Ambassador Yaneri Morgan has long years of experience at UN, and in 1995 she was in the Beijing World Conference on Women. She is here with us online, and she can make very good comments for us. Due to time constraint, I would like to ask her to make comments in 5 minutes.
Much. It's a pleasure to join this event from Mexico City. I congratulate the Korean Women's Development Institute for this initiative that reflects the interest and the commitment of this country with the achievement of gender equality. I am very glad to see Ambassador Cho and members of the Generation Equality Youth Task Force as fellow panelists. As has been said by Vice Minister Delgado and my colleagues from France, Ambassador Delfino, we are very enthusiastic about the celebration of the Generation Equality Forum and about the excitement and expectation this forum is creating around the world, especially in the difficult situation we are facing and the terrible impact of this pandemic on women and girls over the world. I would like to take this opportunity to stress some ideas on what the forum is about. First, mobilization. As happened 20 years ago at the Beijing conference, the guest spirit is based on mobilization of civil society organizations and feminist movements in a moment in which all the energy is needed to put at the center the important agenda contained in the Beijing Platform of Action to accelerate efforts for its implementation. Second, partnership. The GEF is a multi-stakeholder effort where member states, civil society organizations, feminist movements, youth organizations, private sector, foundations, international organizations, including UN agencies, and academia, come together with one objective: to move forward the gender equality agenda. All participants are committed to bring something to the table, from political commitment to mobilization of constituencies and resources required to implement transformative actions. Third, the GEF is action-oriented. One of the objectives of the forum implies through the 6 action coalitions with a multi-stakeholder leadership already in place, an exercise of identifying specific actions to be implemented in 5 years' term with a follow-up and accountability blueprints. The Compact of Women, Peace and Security, and humanitarian action that will be another result of the GEF, will support efforts already in place to advance, for the advancement of the Women and Peace and Security agenda. Fourth, the soul of the GEF is to put the focus on an intergenerational conversation, where youth generations can be not only the focus on policy, but the active participants of this process. In this regard, I am very glad to address to young people tonight, because you have the energy that is needed to transform this world in a more equal one as the only way to build back better. I am very glad to see the friends of the Generation Equality Youth Task Force with us. Fifth, intersectionality is another pillar of the GEF. There is a need to see women and girls in all their diversity and give visibility and address the realities of women and girls, in particular those in vulnerable situations, like indigenous women, Afro-descendant, women with disability, women in poverty, rural women, migrants, and refugee women. Sixth, and last, the GEF is about transformative leadership. One of the main commitments we need to address is to accelerate efforts to put women leadership as the moving force to address gender equality. Women transformative leadership is needed not only in the political field, but in all fields of human activities, in economy, education, health, science, security, and we are still far away to address parity. The only way to be transformative is including the hearts of the humanity in all decision process for benefit of all members of the societies. Mexico is really interested to come with the active engagement of Korea in the forum. Our objectives are in line with the commitment from different partners in this country had with this agenda. I thank you very much for the invitation to this dialogue. I am very glad to participate. Thank you.
네,
Thank you very much, Ambassador Morgan. Actually, we were supposed to have Q&A session after the first session. So why don't we proceed with the session in this way? First, it's time to wrap up the first session now. So I would like to ask Ambassador Cho and Ambassador Morgan to be with us online. So after taking a 10-minute break, we're going to start the second session. And in the second session, we will listen to the presentation from our young members, and we have discussion session prepared in the second session. So why don't we share Q&A with the two ambassadors in the discussion session after second session. Then why don't we wrap up the first session, and after 10 minutes, we will resume the session at 3:10 p.m. Korean time. Thank you. So, have you enjoyed your break time? From now on, we will start the second session. In the second session, actually, for the Generation Equality Forum, the Generation Equality Forum was selected as the theme of the international activities commemorating the 25th anniversary of Beijing Conference on Women. And we will actually invited many people from around the world to cooperate with us to develop the women's agendas. I'm going to introduce to you the speakers for the second session. So when I introduce your name, you may wave your hand on the screen. The first speaker is Ji So-yoon, the Associate Research Fellow at KWDI. She's going to make presentation on Korean women's participation in politics. Second speaker is Karen Dasa, the social worker at Generation Equality Youth Task Force, to talk about Cameron's sexual and reproductive health. And the third speaker is Darren Paul, a young member of Global Youth Task Force, who will talk about sexual reproductive health education. And the last speaker is Salam Al-Nukta. She's going to talk about the activities of the task force in enhancing women's STEM education. Due to time constraint and as we are behind the schedule, I would like to ask each speaker to finish your presentation in 7 minutes. Now let's listen to the first speaker, Yoon Ji-so, presentation. I would like to
And today I'll be presenting, I'll be giving a presentation titled From Activism to Leadership, Young Women's Political Representation in South Korea. 오늘 많이 얘기가 나오고 있지만 1995년에 북경에서 개최된 4차 세계
World Conference on Women was held in Beijing, and Beijing Declaration and Beijing Platform for Action were adopted. And it has strategic objectives for women in power and decision-making diagnosis. First of all, the first strategic objective is to take measures to ensure women's equal access to and full participation in power structure and decision-making. Secondly, increase women's capacity to participate in decision-making and leadership. The presence of women leaders bring about meaningful changes in private sector, public institutions, and political sector. And according to report, the elected women politicians tend to take more egalitarian attitude, and they have more interest in care policy, healthcare policies, and violence against women, and equal pay, and so on. And when Beijing Platform for Action was adopted in the past, global women members of Congress accounted for 13.6%, and in 2020, that proportion increased to 24.9%. So there was an increase, however, the result is not yet satisfactory. And in 1995, no country achieved the full gender parity, but as of now, we have several countries which achieved the full gender parity, for example, Rwanda, Cuba, and so on. So, considering this achievement in those countries, we can see that there have been progress in terms of the women's representation in the Congress. And in order to befit the objectives of Gender Equality Forum, I would like to address Korean young women's political participation and representation. And I'd like to talk about what kind of measures we need to develop young women's political participation into sustainable representation of women. This is the current status of women participating in the Korean politics. As Ambassador Zhou mentioned, I will not repeat what she said. So the point is that since we adopted the quota system, there has been some increase in the level of women's representation in politics. We still have a long way to go. And in the arena of politics, the youth is a minority group. When I mention youth, it means the National Assembly members below the age of 40. So before 2000, we had only 3 young members in the National Assembly, but recently the number increased to about 13. So recently, 13 young members of National Assembly have been elected. So this underrepresentation of the youth is the issue of both men and women, but I'd like to focus on the issue of women. If young women do not want to make their way to elective offices, then women's underrepresentation in political arena will not be easily resolved. For the past 10 years in Korea, women's active participation in politics have gained a lot of attention. Many women in their 20s to 30s participated in the protests and demonstrations, and in the 19th presidential election, women showed very high turnout ratio compared to men. And in Korea, the young people do not actively participate in the political parties overall, but in the case of the Democratic Party of Korea, they have relatively higher proportion of young members, and almost half of them are young women members in their 20s to 30s. So as such, there are quite a lot of women in their 20s to 30s who are participating in political activities, but still their representation is not high. So we had a look at the reason why. This is a research we conducted recently at KWDI. First of all, we surveyed about 1,000 young members of political parties in Korea. And there is not a big number of young people who actually ran for the political offices. But in terms of the number of women, young women who are considering the candidacy or who are willing to run for the elective office, amount to quite a large proportion. So we can say that today we have quite a sufficient pool of young women candidates, and many young women members in political parties had great interest in gender equality and gender conflict issues. So if those women make their way to the political arena in the future, then their main policy agenda is likely to be gender equality issue. And what are the obstacles to the aggressive political party activities of young female members? This is the photo taken at the recent National Convention of Democratic Party of Korea. First of all, the National Convention of the political parties are held and preceded, dominated by men. That's why young women members do not have much room to secure their position. And many young women members of political parties said that they feel like they're being exploited or being used by the middle-aged male groups that have vested rights in the political parties. So we have actually made several proposals to foster women's activities in political parties. First, we need to secure the budgets in the political parties to support young women, and we need to facilitate young women's groups within political parties. And third proposal is that we have to ensure higher representation of young women in political parties. And this needs to be stipulated into document and statement. And in order to enhance young women's participation and representation in the politics, we need to be more active in selecting young women members in the political parties as, for example, executives. And if the number of female members who run for candidacy increase, then that will bring about greater influence on the future women generation. For example, they can be the role model for the next generation young female members. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Dr. Yoon Ji-so.
I would like to invite the next discussant. She is Karen Dasa. She's from Cameroon. Karen?
I will be talking to you about championing gender equality in conflict-affected communities in Cameroon. I will be taking you through my journey, my work. We'll talk about some of the problems that I've encountered as an activist and how I made it through. Okay. I'm sure most of you are aware that my country, especially in my region, the Northwest and Southwest region. So this is just a brief introduction of what the Anglophone crisis is all about. The Anglophone crisis is also known as the Amazonian War. It's a of Amazonia and began fighting with the government. Some effects of the war. The conflict has led to the loss of lives that is glaring, because if you look over social media, you hear how people are being killed even yesterday. Loss of properties, displacements of thousands of persons. We have over 70,000 Cameroonians in neighboring Nigeria as refugees. We have others who are living in the bushes, and others are in other safer regions. Effects of the war on women and girls. The effects are enormous. I can take a whole day to talk about the impact of this crisis on women and girls and the sexual reproductive human rights of women and girls. The first point I put down is the high increase of gender-based violence and no access to basic health services. In some areas, limited access to education because there's been a war on schools, no schools. And if you're very current with the Cameroon situation, realized that last month, on the 24th of October, students were killed in a school in Kumba. Increase in child marriages and unintended pregnancy. This is as a result of no limited access to sexual reproductive health services, no access to hospitals in some areas where hospitals have been burned down, an increase in rape, torture on women and girls as well, because gender-based violence is common within the context of the crisis in the Northwest and the Southwest region of my country. So you hear stories of women becoming targets of violence. No access to health services. Hospitals have been burned down due to the confrontations in these regions, making access to health very, very difficult. Apart from this, health facilities have been targeted. We have recorded cases whereby patients were being militarized. We've had cases of military going into hospitals and taking out patients in the two regions in the northwest and also in the southwest. And we had issues where hospitals have been burned down to ashes with patients who were in the hospital. Patients were burned down in hospitals. No access to education. For over 4 years, students in some parts have no opportunity going to school. Schools have been targeted by secessionist fighters, while some schools have become military bases to both warring parties. Teachers and students have been targeted and killed. We've reported cases of teachers whose body parts have been amputated, students kidnapped in schools, while several schools have been brought down, leading to a high level of illiteracy, while children don't go to school anymore. Increased child marriage and unintended pregnancy. Young girls are in the middle, as many have been kidnapped and they became wives of warlords. You know, this is a very common practice where the warlords, those with power, those who feel more powerful than these young girls. So they take the girls as their wives, and they not like wives like in the legal sense, but without their consent. So me, it's a kind of kidnap that they kidnap young girls and use them for their sexual pleasure and as their wives, because they have the guns and they are more powerful than these girls. We have limited access to health services, which has led many girls pregnant. Inaccessibility of these regions where hospitals have been burnt, health workers have been targeted. Most of them have left and fled those regions, and making access to health services a huge problem. Rape. The incidence of rape has been heightened. Rape has been used as a tool of war against women and girls, especially in this context of the crisis in these regions. Torture. This is a very dehumanizing act. It's evident in this crisis. We had stories of a girl who was pulled by the neck like a goat and taken to the main road where vehicles were passing, and her head was chopped off. These are some of the occurrences, which is these characteristics of the conflict in the regions, in the two regions of my country. Okay, so what have I been doing as an organization? Our organization supports girls and women who have been victims of this crisis in these regions. We provide psychosocial support and counseling. We provide ensure and support them. The outbreak of COVID-19, most of our work have been through social media, using the telephone to do phone calls and limiting gathering of persons in an area. We provide social support, counseling to survivors of gender-based violence and affected by trauma, peace building and social cohesion, humanitarian assistance, sexual reproductive rights, education and services. That is some of the services and some of the issues that we've been working towards, and ensuring that the lives of these people in these two regions are better despite the occurrences. Some of the difficulties that we've had as an organization and as an activist, as a young woman, we've had death threats. Sometimes people, because of your stance, your peace stance, you hear issues like you are a black leg, you should be kidnapped. I've had stories of so many times where I've had to move from where I live and run away to another region for security reasons, where you've been targeted, you've been flagged. Inaccessibility, there is an issue. Before you go into the field, you need to negotiate your way. You need to negotiate with both parties, and sometimes it is so difficult because sometimes people don't want to understand what exactly you want to do, and most of your actions are always taken to the negative directions or ill thought. Lack of resources, support to youth-led organizations. Youth-led organizations have great potentials. They have great ideas. They want to reach out to the people in the interior. They want to do this, but they are being limited due to funding. They don't have funding for their activities, and an issue of defamation, where you do something and it goes over social media, or ill-minded people take it and turn it the other way around for their own political agenda. Kidnapping for ransom, which a lot of activists like myself have been victims of that. Complexity of the crisis. Today they will say, don't move on Monday, stay at home. Today it is, don't drink alcohol, which is being made by a particular company. So those complexities make it very much difficult for us. Lack of adequate capacity in peace building, leadership techniques, and safety and and security. So to end my presentation, I just want to take you through, I know that I'm talking to young students from Korea and other great panelists. I'm glad to be amongst you today. I just want to take you through maybe one of the things that I've done, like the pictures. Like this is a picture of an advocacy for peace where I was wearing an orange t-shirt, orange hair tie like the one I have here to signify non-violence, signify peace, signify justice, and solidarity with all women. And here we're doing campaigns to end violence against women and girls in the university. Yeah, I am. That was true. The 16 days of activism last year. And here we have young women, grassroots women. We're training them on peace building. And this is a project a project campaign we run, which is called the Her Place campaign. Next, we have protests against the killings. Like I explained to you, last month, we heard of how children were killed in the school in Kumba, where we saw the brains of children on the floor. So this is part of the team. I am seated there on the floor crying, and we're going to the governor's office and saying we need a solution to end the brutal killing of our children, talking about generational equality campaign with young people in schools. Also providing this is another project we have, Healing Invisible Wound. This project was focusing more on those who have gone through traumatic experience as a result of the conflict in the two regions. So we brought them together and had a storytelling session where they shared their story, and it was a kind of way of us bonding. And now you see us in Kumba wearing black and red. I am there with the white mask and the red scarf on my waist. We're going where the student, this is the town where children were killed in their class on the 24th of October 2020. So we went to the school to show solidarity. We went to the town and we marched. We had over 5,000 women who supported us in doing this activity. Thank you very, very much for your kind attention.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you so much. So you shared with us lots of stories, including gender-based violence, and we understand that you are facing so many difficulties and challenges, and through the photos you shared with us, we could understand what kinds of activities you have been doing.
So we're going to move on to the next presentation. Mr. Darren Paul Kaltibak is the next speaker. Now, he is the Deputy Chair of Global Network of Young People Living with HIV. Also, he is a member of Generation Equality Youth Task Force. Are you online? Okay. Would you please start your presentation?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. Annyeonghaseyo. My name is Darren Paul, and I will be presenting or sharing my experiences on sexual reproductive health and rights and HIV programming in the Philippines. Before I start my presentation, let me just share you a little bit of my story. My parents have been my childhood heroes, most especially my mother. And they are my main inspiration to study hard and to serve others. I still remember my mom telling me that, in order to inspire others, you need to share your talents. And it has been my motivation, to share my experiences. And it has been my main reason working on the field of youth engagement and male engagement in terms of gender and sexuality issues, including HIV. As you can see in the picture here on the right side, it's one of our programs on medical mission. And then the other one on top is like, I am attending a conference engaging men and also young people to engage in gender and sexuality issues. Yeah. So as you all, I am originally from the Philippines, and just to give you a little bit of the background, we are composed of 7,107 islands. So as you can see here, those are our famous tourist spots in the Philippines. And we are currently 106 million as of now, and we are one of the predominantly Roman Catholic in terms of religion in Southeast Asia. So again, I'm going to share some of my experience working with the Catholic Bishops Conference of the Philippines. And during my last 5 years with them, I've been working in different public health concerns, most especially on HIV, and also in pushing for gender equality and women empowerment in all different regions in the Philippines. Yeah. And I'm also working on different public health concerns such as tuberculosis and malaria as well. You know, just to give you a little bit of the context of sexual and reproductive health and rights in the Philippines, we do have a lot of issues. We have a huge unmet need for family planning, and our HIV incidence rates are on the rise. As of this year, we are currently reporting around 30 Filipinos getting infected by the deceased every day. And then the teenage pregnancy in the Philippines is also on the increase, from 65% in 2000 to more than 200% starting 2010. And around 24 babies is born to young mothers every hour. So let me just share to you some of our program and activities that I'm working on in my organization. So we're currently working on creating a guidelines for young people in terms of youth engagement. So in the recent years, a lot of young people, are being engaged at multiple levels, and they have a lot of varied experiences, and some of them are being exploited and tokenized, most especially in terms of logistical and financial requirements. And um, and we felt that this inequality should be stopped. So we are currently working on creating a guidelines wherein this guideline will protect young people in general, including people living with HIV, um, in the process and guidance of engaging them in different aspects, whether it's in a conference or whether asking them to be a speaker in one of the discussions. So again, I would like to emphasize that young people should be engaged locally, regionally, and internationally, and they need to be safe, respected, and valued. That's why we're working on those specific guidelines as of the moment. And then I also would like to highlight the second program that we're currently implementing right now in my organization is we are on the process, or we are continually engaging men in general, to be involved in different gender and sexuality issues. And we have been telling them that there are current harmful masculinities that are present in our society, whether it's gender norms that upholds men's privilege over women, or behaviors that actually perpetuates violence uh, for women and against their children. And also there are issues pertaining to men's controlling over women's sexual reproductive health and rights. And all these issues, we've been talking to them. We've been talking to men, and we're engaging them in these discussions. And what I'm really proud for this particular program and is that we have been engaging a lot of men in different countries right now. As my organization is, it's a global network. We have different country networks in different regions. And we are currently involving not only men, but also young men in general. Yeah. So again, I just would like to highlight the different learnings that we had in terms of this particular program. We believe that, programs and interventions engaging men and boys need to be intentional in promoting gender equality, and it has to focus on highlighting the harmful gender norms, including masculinities, and challenge the unequal gender power relations. And then one of our lessons as well is we need a stronger evidence uh, in proving this one. And we've been conducting research, in the past few years. And definitely, we know that if we engage men in the process, we can definitely, alleviate the sufferings that women are currently experiencing. And again, I would like to emphasize that we don't only need to engage men, but we have to engage the different program implementers and researchers in all aspects. And whether it's a women's organization, a feminist organization, or a men's organization, they have to be included. And that's have been our learning in the last few years. So again, I just would like to emphasize that in order for us to push for gender equality, we have to put our heart along the process, and we need to be compassionate for others. Um, we need leaders, including young people, that transcends to serve others with respect and humility. As you can see here in my presentation, if we have sexual reproductive health and rights, and we have a comprehensive HIV and AIDS treatment, or basically just access to these holistic services, human rights will be realized, poverty will be alleviated, lives will be saved, and again, women will be empowered, and definitely development will be sustained. And lastly, for my last slide, I will leave you with this quote from Kosis and Posner, saying that leadership is not an affair of the head. Leadership is an affair of the heart. With that, I end my presentation. 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your explanation about passionate activities of what your organization is doing and your activities that combine both sexual reproductive health promotion and gender equality promotion was very impressive. If you have any comments or question, please leave your comments on the comment section of YouTube or Zoom.
Then let me invite the last speaker. She is Salam Al-Nukta. She is from the business community. She is in the entrepreneurial activities. I'd like to invite Salam Al-Nukta for her presentation.
Yes, well, hello, and thank you very much for organizing such a conference. It's awkward to have a conference online, but I think that's the norm for today with the pandemic. I'm really happy that you were able to overcome the challenges and bring us all together. So my name is Salam, which translates to peace in English, and I originally come from Syria. But I like to identify myself as a global citizen, hoping one day we will be able to eliminate all borders keeping us apart. Of course, it's very lovely to be here amongst powerful females leading the new generation towards a better world. During the past 10 years in Syria, I actually lived the most enriching and beautiful learning experience I would have ever dreamed of, which shaped the advocate I am today. The real life experiences, the people whom I met, and the businesses I created, the initiatives I've led and followed, and the leaders whom inspired me were very exceptional. I doubt that living anywhere on this earth would have rewarded me with that. So Syria is beyond what you see in the news. It's more than a piece of land in the Middle East, or a conflict zone which people are not allowed to visit for tourism. Syria has a very beautiful culture and a lot of tasty food, trust me. More importantly, Syrian women are tough and aspiring. Cooperation, resilience, and survival are strongly embedded in our values. So I hope in the next 7 minutes, I'm able to bring to you some of that. 10 years ago, I graduated from high school. and I thought I was going to become a scientist. My plans and aspirations were not only put on hold, but were almost wiped away as the crisis hit my country, Syria. I enrolled for a bachelor's in science and a bachelor's degree in sciences, biology at Damascus University. And although I knew that this was not exactly what I wanted, I really had limited means to change it. So I just proceeded. This also marked the first time I heard the word entrepreneurship. It sounded a little bit complex to pronounce, to be honest, at first. And also to understand. A few years later, it became my passion. Today, I would like to highlight to you a few of women's barriers to business in the MENA region, inspired, of course, by the Syria context, and why entrepreneurship seems to be a good solution to economic prosperity and inclusivity, especially there. To do that today, I have been extensively interested in participation in the economy. I have accumulated over 5 years of experience in working with startups in Syria, from establishing, failing, or succeeding my own, to working and supporting others. My entrepreneurial spirit did not come as a surprise. My little brother here on the screen would have told you more if he was here. Because when we were young, he used to trade candies in his school for me and collect profits while I redistributed them. And back in 2011, when the biggest humanitarian crisis in the country, our economy collapsed. Syria, which the UN today describes its economy as developing, has been suffering the economic, social, and cultural consequences of war. Imagine these doubled, if not tripled, for women. While men started to lose their jobs and join military forces, women sensed an urgent need to work and support their families. Yet, their attempts did not go as smooth as they wished them to. And unfortunately, entry to market, employment, and entrepreneurship, despite it being a global trend, are not equally provided to everyone. The list of women's challenges to enter the market can go very long and beyond financial barriers. They include social barriers, whose implications could be felt more heavily in many parts of the world. Barriers to women's participation in the economy remain numerous, especially in the underdeveloped and developing countries, despite the collective efforts to eliminate them. And according to the World Bank, in developing countries, women are 3 times less likely than men to work in the ICT sector, and 8 times less likely to work in digital jobs. Female entrepreneurs and women-led small and medium-sized enterprises often have limited access to finance. And as technology changes the way businesses operate, this gender gap in entrepreneurship is expanding, as many women have less access to digital skills training. And that's exactly why we founded Changemakers in 2016, aiming to empower young people with technology as a tool for innovation and change. The little numbers of girls joining the STEM-based education pathways highlighted the necessity for such an effort and inspired the foundation of Changemakers, aiming to reduce the gender gap in the tech field in Syria. Changemakers did not want to convince girls to pursue a tech-based career. We wanted to let them know that such a thing existed and they can pursue it. Through that, Changemakers focused on 3 things. Coding is not a boy thing. Our curriculum is convenient for anyone who has basic computer literacy and math. Our courses were developed in-house. Finally, creating role and success models aiming to break stereotypes. Changemakers has a team of brilliant, talented female programmers. Girls, as well as their families, are usually concerned about other life aspects if they pursue a tech-based career. For example, deprioritizing family making. Our coaches prove to be that even programmers, female programmers, are beautiful, continue to take care of themselves, date, and go out. In Syria, for example, the rate of women's participation in the entrepreneurial ecosystem tripled since 2009 and went up to 22.4% in 2008, according to a study done by Ahmed Soufian, which indicates that women are actively taking part since 2011, after the whole country fell into a recession. And according to Ahmed, a collaborative economy activist and researcher says in his book, women's economic participation is as crucial as men's when the post-conflict economies look to rebuild. You know, because when there is need, there's always an opportunity. And although challenges and barriers are continuing to build up, we have more opportunities to engage women. Finally, in 2019, I decided to quit Damascus University and relocate to the Netherlands to reunite with my amazing husband. I have made my decision to restart my bachelor's degree in international business in the Netherlands at the age of 26, to equip myself with the skills and academic knowledge needed to continue empowering women who aspire to fulfill their entrepreneurial potential. That came because during my past years in Syria during the conflict, the creativity and bravery of women's actions have inspired me greatly. Their isolated and unheard advocacy commitments in their communities shall be recognized as part of a larger strategy. I believe gender equality, entrepreneurship, and technology are fundamental to the prosperity of the world. And during the past years, I visited around 10 countries representing women and voiced their concerns. I realized that when women are given opportunities, they thrive. And when they're put in leadership, they succeed. Without the contribution of the other half of the world, we are risking failing to achieve success in the Sustainable Development Goals, hence prosperity for all. And it's unfortunate that I cannot organically interact with an audience right now, but I would like to end my presentation by urging everyone, including policymakers, institutes, young people, activists, advocates around the world, to continue the conversation on how to empower women, as well as young people, to take groundbreaking innovations and reshape the way we do businesses. I invite you freely to reach out to me if this topic interests you. It's never enough to discuss and exchange ideas on this topic. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much for the impressive presentation about Syria.
As we have heard about the entrepreneurial activities in Syria despite the conflict. Thank you very much for the presentation. We don't have lots of time left, but since we have very important people here, so we are going to have about 5 to 10 minutes Q&A session. So I have with me, Ambassador Joe, and also the Executive Secretary Morgan. I would like to ask Ambassador Joe and Executive Secretary Morgan to make final comments.
There's a question in the new YouTube. I'm going to read. Question goes to Mr. Darren. Regarding human rights and sexual and reproductive health, you are doing meaningful activities. Thank you very much for your activities. And now, under the COVID-19, especially when we think about the youth, the teenagers who have serious problems of teenage pregnancy. So regarding the early pregnancy of teenagers, how are you responding to the problem under COVID-19?
We have to change the narrative. What do I mean by that? Let me just share you one of the programs that one of our partners NGO is currently doing in the Philippines. So we have this called libro sa labas ng bahay, meaning we're bringing out education materials outside of the schools and universities. And then we are also doing health services, or we are providing health services at the same time. So I guess if we combine both, then that would be an amazing solution to that particular issue. So yeah, that's one of our main solution, I guess, in terms of that problem. But then again, we also have to make sure that we prioritize the health of those teenage pregnant mothers. So thank you. That's on my side.
Thank you very much for your answer. Ambassador Joe, do you have a question?
Then I have a question to Karin Dasaha from Cameroon. And also I have a question to Salam from Syria. So I have two questions. First, for Karen. So I know that the war and the conflict is persisting for a long time. So I wondered what kind of the role model that youth has in order to move forward in the future. So do they have any role model? So do they have any role model from the adult or the older generations so that they can lead the future? My second question to Salam is, in order to nurture the skills and talent of women, especially in STEM area, I wonder, I think that if there is no leadership, then it will be very difficult to realize their skills. So even if a woman has some economic power, the woman cannot make change if she is not given leadership. So the woman may not be involved in decision making. So do you think that it seems that there is a possibility that the women might have some STEM skills, but may not increase their economic status. So what needs to be done? What should be improved in order to improve the overall situation of women?
Okay. Can I answer your question?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. For the young people, the role models that we have as to look forward to, I want to say first of all, we have role models like in the African continent, like Lema Bowie, who led the Liberian women and saw women going on the street to preach peace. I think we also have role models like the elders and others. But in our country, in Cameroon, we have women in the civil society space who are older, who are our elders, who are working tirelessly to bring about change in the community and bring the hope of the young people. And at the same time, we still have, let me call the spoilers, because sometimes you don't have something that you can write back about these people that I can term them spoilers. But when it comes to role models in Cameroon, we have role models. We have great women, great leaders, and who are encouraging and bringing hope to young people by their leadership, by their consistency, by their passion, and by their enthusiasm to see a change in narratives so far as the crisis in our region is concerned, which has taken a lot of lives. So when it comes to that, we have role models that we look up to, and we are hopeful that our tomorrow will be better, and we are inspired to believe that if they can do this, if they can achieve this, if they can go this height, then as young people we will do same, and we even cross boundaries with that example.
Thank you very much for the answer. So there was the question to Salam Al Nukta. So let me summarize the question to Salam Al Nukta. Ambassador Joe said that sometimes economic empowerment may not lead to the stronger political power of women. So do you have some solutions, Salam?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. We actually asked the same thing to ourselves when we established change makers. So indeed, I think economic empowerment in technology and leadership skills are very important and interconnected to build a strong nation, but also a strong person. So when Changemakers was founded, we did not only focus on technology and programming empowerment, but we also had a similar focus on leadership skills. And I believe that leadership is earned. So once women are equipped with these skills, once they prove that they once any woman prove that she deserves to be put in leadership, she will. We have seen many women becoming leaders. We have seen many examples of role models being very successful leaders, you know, just looking at the examples we had this morning. So I think equal focus on leadership skills as well as programming skills and economic empowerment is what we're looking for.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you, Salam. I have question to Dr. Yoon Ji-so. You made presentation about Korean young women's participation in politics. What do you think is the biggest challenge for you, whether it be in women's political participation or other activities? Today, the theme of our forum is also the gender equality in across the generation. And I think that it's very important for different generations to have communication with each other to promote gender equality. And since Beijing Platform for Action, we have made quite much progress, but still, in the case of the progress we made with the young men, many young men still think that they're being discriminated against. And many young men still feel confused. And they don't really think that women are faced with gender inequality. Rather, they think that they themselves are faced with gender inequality. So we need to continue to have communication with those people, including male peers. Yes, I agree with you. So we have a long way to go. But as we discussed today, we need to strengthen our solidarity and we need to come together under the common objectives. It seems that we need to close today's forum. So Ambassador Joe and Ambassador Morgan are here with us online. I would like to ask the two ambassadors to make closing remarks. We listened to the voices of the young people, and could you explain your expectations for these young people? And would you like to make any comments that you feel you must say to these young people? Ambassador Joe will make comments first, and then I will ask Ambassador Morgan to make comments.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to make this comment for the youth. The title of this forum is Generation Equality Forum. In this era, men and women should work together for the gender equality. So according to the Generation Equality Forum, so we have to deal with action coalitions. This means that the different parties and stakeholders should work together and collaborate with each other for a certain action. This way, we will make a society where nobody is left behind. As I said in my presentation, we have to deal with old problems and new problems. So both older and youth generations and the future generations who are unborn yet need to address those issues. So we have to think about how to make sure that the different generations should work together to address those issues. So I'd like to thank the discussants from Cameroon, the Philippines, and Syria for their contributions to let us know the situations of their countries. Still, there are the common challenges and universal challenges that we need to address together. So as an older generation, I would be happy to work with the younger generation to overcome the challenges that are ahead of us. In that regard, I would like to thank KWDI and the young generation from different countries. So going forward, let us work together for a coalition. In that process, I hope to see you again in the future. Once again, you are so remarkable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Joe. I'm impressed by your remarks. I'd like to ask Ambassador Morgan to make comments.
Thank you very much for the invitation. was a very interesting and inspirational session. I want to invite the youth to be engaged with this movement. We need all the support and energy and the commitment from the youth generations to move forward this agenda. At the end, the real deal is how to transform the lives of women and girls that now are suffering even more from the pandemic and all their economic and social impact. It's impossible to build back better if we don't build back equal. And that's the forum is about. We invite you to be engaged with this effort. And thank you very much. I was very pleased to be here with you.
Thank you very much for your comments. It's very late in Mexico, but thank you for being with us online. Now it's time to wrap up the forum. Actually, it seems like I'm in between new generation and senior generation, but I think I have my own role to play, and KWDI has its role to play. We will think about this and make more efforts. Thank you all for being with us in the forum. And there are other young people who made so much effort to make this event success. I'd like to invite some more staff members from KWDI here. And as mentioned before, from today, so you know that we will carry out the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So as part of the campaign, we are dressed in orange. So as I said, these two colleagues from KWDI worked very hard to make this online forum possible. Thank you very much and goodbye.